May 6th, 2020, and I want to welcome everyone to the Enriching Gifts Education Call. Ron Schneider is not joining us this evening. However, we do have a video that we want to play, and then we'll field some questions and take some comments here shortly. So Ron will be back next week, and just rest assured that he's doing some good things for himself health-wise, and he's addressing some challenges that he has had with some severe burns to the bottom of his feet. So that's why he's not here this evening. So he extends a apology. He wanted to be here like he is each and every week, and unfortunately it just didn't work out that way. So what I'm going to do at this time is I'm going to share my screen, and then Roderick, if you can give me a little bit of feedback in terms of quality of volume and video content. And I just want to do a little disclaimer here to let everybody know that the words might be off a little bit, and just bear with us. It's the content that we want to cover, and make sure we're all getting some really good education here. So here we go. And I am going to take the liberty to mute a few of you out just because I'm getting some feedback and background noise. And then we'll go from there. Okay. And Roderick, can you see my screen?
Looks good.
Perfect. Here we go.
No sound this time.
No sound. Okay, give me a second. We're going to take this a step further. And I believe it's the recording. So let me stop the recording with you. Please feel free to do so. So we're just coming off the infomercial. That was January, actually, of 2009, that file was. It has been scrubbed to where we have a cleaner version, and I didn't have that available for everybody, but we will make it available on the website here shortly. So any questions or comments from anyone on the call? And you're going to have to unmute yourselves. So if you are muted, just unmute and come out, ask your question, give your comment, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, hey Dover. Can you hear me, Dover?
How you doing, James? Yes,
yeah,
loud and clear. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can. That's great. I really haven't got a question. I guess it's more of a observation, comment, but just realizing the power and the nature of these enzymes. And look, I've had a look at a lot of the enzymes on the market, and there's a lot of people making all these claims that theirs is the best, theirs is number one, all that sort of thing. But there's no product like the plant enzymes that can do that type of demonstration in 10 seconds. There's not another company on the planet, and that's fact. So it's pretty exciting, I think, to see, just what these enzymes are capable of doing. And it's not just, as we know, it's not just the digestion of food, it's what it does in your blood. And I guess that infomercial can't sort of show that, but it's not just about that digestion, is it? It's so much more, so much more.
No, you're spot on there, James, and it's amazing what those enzymes do. And I've done that myself, hundreds and hundreds. I was going to say thousands. That's not accurate. hundreds of times, and without a doubt, it's consistent. You drop that capsule in there, you stir it up a few times, and my goodness, it liquefies it and turns it to fiber, and then you get the back and forth. And I've done it with other enzymes. I've worked in the past with some naturopathic doctors, and I had the great fortune of doing their blood analysis for those practices, and we actually demonstrated other enzymes. I don't have that information with me here tonight, but we've done those tests like yourself. You know, you've been in the industry and been in the game, so to speak, for so long that Ron's uncovered something very important. And if you notice, he said something there about the country of Turkey, right? Because you look at activation of enzymes, and on one hand, we have the external factors. And Ron talks about this all the time. The external factors of enzymes are minerals. And the minerals that he uses, for those of you that are new, you might not understand this, but just understand that on the back of the bottle, he has a proprietary blend called CRF, GR8 CF77, which is the great cofactor 77 trace ionic minerals. Those minerals are only found at the base of the Caucasus Mountains in Turkey. And so he has a proprietary blend that activates those those enzymes. Again, external factors that activate internal. Internal is the heat and the water. So we live in the Western culture, most of us. I know we have some friends down south of us, but we have in the Western culture a diet that consists of what when we eat our food? An iced beverage, a cold beer, those types of things. So now the body has to not only have the mineral blend to activate them externally, but now internally heat and water. So the heat side of it is if we're consuming a cold beverage with our meals, then now it's got to heat up and it slows down the activation process, is my point. The other part to the internal with heat and water is water, hydration. And Ron will tell all of us, proper hydration is take your body weight, cut it in half, and you should be drinking that many ounces of water. So if you're a 170 or 150 pound individual, you cut that in half, 75 pounds, or in this example, ounces, you should be consuming 75 ounces of water a day just to maintain proper hydration. So if you're not hydrated and you're drinking cold beverage with your meals, you're not activating the enzymes internally. You've got the external because Ron put the minerals into the product blend, but now and you look at the Asian culture, for example, and a lot of them, they sip, tea, and that aids in the activation of digestion process. And we've kind of got away from that here in the Western culture, and we wonder why diabetes and heart disease and all these things associated with it are the leading killer in our society. So you're spot on. We really have. Ron really has created something that's very special that I don't think sometimes that I give credit to at its very core essence, which is just the enzymes. Let's stop and not talk about the coral and the hard algae and the calcium and the colloidal silver and all those other products, the probiotics, etc. The enzymes, because if you don't break down your food to a usable or absorbable form, it becomes toxic to our body, and that's where Ron will get on the call and tell each and every one of us that's where all degenerative disease stems from. Poorly or undigested food, right? It becomes toxic. So this took me back as I was going through this infomercial to say, and you're right, being in the marketplace, this is something that we need to share with the masses. I've had the great pleasure of actually Tom Mano, who was on that infomercial. I spent some time with him back in 2009. He passed away from esophagus cancer. And I'll tell everybody on this call, this is a guy who created his own protein drink. He's the world's strongest man over the age of 50. I had him here in the Seattle area at LA Fitness, which is our one of the major fitness centers or gyms. And he attempted his world record, 738 pounds in the bench press at that time. I was present. He tied it. He didn't beat it. But my point being is he was not practicing, so to speak, sometimes what he preached. And so he wasn't using Ron's products consistently, got esophagus cancer. And I'll never forget, we were at a restaurant. He was eating a hamburger, and he kept hiccuping nonstop. And that was the start, and we didn't know it at that time. He eventually returned back to Arizona where he resided, and he found out that he had esophagus cancer. And at that point, it was just unfortunately too late. I don't mean to be, this to be a negative call or talk, but that's the reality of it. Is we have these tools, we have that product line, and it's very powerful, and we should be using that for ourselves. One, because the best way to help the sick is not be one of them, and then two, share it with others, because there's nothing else like that out there. And there's other quality products. And Ron, and that's what I love about Ron, is he does these calls each and every week to educate, yet he never really promotes his product. He's an educator. He's a data scientist. He's a scientist. And he wants to get the message out there. And he knows that his product is superior to everyone else. However, if you don't believe him, go try something else and then come back and try mine. It's kind of his mindset, because he knows. And so, I can keep on my soapbox and rattle, and I don't want to do that, because this is, I'm just passionate about what's going on here. And that infomercial, when I watched it again recently and then shared it with Roderick earlier today, I was like, I want to share this with everybody, because I think this is something that we need to get back to the basics and the core essence of what really this message of Enriching Gifts is all about: preventing disease and illness by strengthening the body's immune system. And when you do that, you're doing that with the very core and foundation of breaking down the food that we consume. I don't care if it's vegetarian, I don't care if it's vegan, and I don't care if it's, in Roderick's case, flexitarian, or some of these other words and diets we come up with. It's powerful stuff. So I will stop and just take any other comments or feedback from any of you. Please share. And I do have a comment from Steve. If you drink molecular hydrogen-rich water, you will be even more hydrated with less water. I love that. So yes, and you're absolutely right. But for the most part, and the reason and Steve, yes, you're spot on. The reason I even brought that up with activation of enzymes from, water and heat, is that most of us don't drink. I mean, and I hear it all the time. Well, I drink X amount of liquids. I didn't say liquids, because you're drinking 3 lattes a day from Starbucks, and you're drinking, a Diet Coke and any other beverage. Okay, great. That's liquid, better than not. But I'm talking about the blessing of nature, as Ron said, that pure, water. So anyways, thank you for sharing that with us, Steve. But anyone else, if you have a question or a comment, feel free to unmute yourself and please step out there and share.
Over, this is Roderick.
Hey, Roderick.
Hey, I love your passion, and you reminded us that you used the phrase trace minerals, and that triggered for me a story that
trace
I had.
Ionic minerals. If I didn't say ionic, I meant ionic. Really, really small, but go ahead.
So I would like to share you a story, if I may. Last week, I was helping out my girlfriend at her store, and one of her employees was trying to get my girlfriend's attention because she knows a lot about vitamins in general and some knowledge of enzymes. So clearly not enough.
So Roderick, I don't know the story, but I want to just make sure that everybody listening understands. When you say store, what type of store is this?
It's a vitamin store, vitamin source store, and organic specialty foods. So she, for 26 years, she's ran that. So she has some knowledge. So anyway, she was busy, and her employee, who was off duty at the time, was going to ask her. I asked her what was her question, and she said, "Well, I was taking some enzymes, not Ron's. I was taking some enzymes, and I took one. I started out with one capsule with my food in the morning, and another capsule of the food in the evening, and she just got, some indigestion. She was concerned, so she stopped taking the vitamins. And so she wanted to ask my girlfriend some questions about, those enzymes. And so I was like, hey, I started talking about Ron, and I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm going to call Ron. I have his phone number, and I've never called him because I respect his time, but Ron always says, call me. And so I called him up, and I let Ron talk to this employee, and I was amazed at how much information I learned personally. And so he took her to the enzymes. He said, show me, look in the bottle, back of the bottle of the enzymes. Tell me exactly how much protease is in there. And she told him the amount, and she said, okay, go down to the next line. Tell me how much. Okay, what's the units? Okay, and he did the translation in his head right there and compared it to his. It's like, okay, so tell me how many minerals it has in there. Of course, trace ionic minerals, he said. He's like, there's none that we could find on the label. So, okay, I think that's your problem. Well, he didn't say I think. He said, that's your problem. You had indigestion, and the fact that you have got, well, I messed up one part of the story. Earlier in the conversation, she said she took apple cider vinegar to get rid of the indigestion. And Ron said, okay, that means your body does not produce hydrochloric acid. That must mean that your enzymes doesn't have trace ionic minerals. And so we looked at the label and there was no trace ionic minerals. He says, mine has trace ionic minerals. Trace ionic minerals helps your body create that HCl, that hydrochloric acid. So I might be, butchering, what Ron said, but the point is that not all enzymes are the same. And she had mentioned that the enzymes was about $20. And he said, with those enzymes, when he calculated how much enzymes was in that $20 bottle, he said, you need to multiply that by 9 times to equal the amount of enzymes that he puts in his capsule of his product. I was blown away. So at any rate, I just wanted to share that story because it just happened last week. It was my first time I called Ron on a one-on-one call with to help somebody, and so yeah, it was very eye-opening for me.
No, and thank you for sharing that. And you're right, because when you talk about the hydrochloric acid, right, for example, and I thought you used apple cider vinegar, and a good rule of thumb is if someone's dealing with indigestion, heartburn, acid reflux, and this is not me, this is just me absorbing Ron for years, right? So when you take the capful is what he normally would suggest of apple cider vinegar. If you take that vinegar and the acid goes away, that means you're under acid. If you take it and it doesn't, then you're over acid, right? And so that's a whole nother conversation that I wish he was here to explain. But yes, you're right. Not all enzymes are created equal. And what really stood out for me, and I'll take you back to like 2005 timeframe when I first met Ron. I had him speak at a conference in Cancun, Mexico at the Moon Palace. And I've shared this before, but this is really my first introduction to enzymes. I went to the nacho bar or to the omelet bar, and I was lactose intolerant, and I had this wonderful, it was a nacho bar actually, and I had some sour cream and a lot of cheese, and my stomach was just really tossing and turning, and indigestion, like your girlfriend's employee, Roderick, and so I was fortunate enough to be a part of this particular organization where I had a little bit of say so, if you will, and so I chose to go into the booth where Ron was at. We're talking 900 individuals at this conference, And so I went in and, you know, respectfully asked if he had some time. He did my blood. What I mean by that is he, you know, did a live blood cell analysis, and he gave me a couple of his enzymes. I think at that time it was just one. And literally within about 8, maybe 10 minutes, as we're talking through some of my issues, I could feel my stomach like something was going on. And it wasn't like a rumble and a bumble where you have an upset tummy. It was more of, I feel like this bloating going down. And so that was kind of my introduction to the enzymes. And so when we did that, I was just like, it was hook, line, and sinker. I was all about it. Obviously, I took away with from that visit some enzymes, and that's what set me on my path to eventually become a dark field microscopist. I was trained by Ron back in 2005 or somewhere around there. In fact, I got some certificates around here where I was trained, but the point being is that's what set me off on this path, and really knowing that, because I was like, let me try and break these enzymes. I'll go out to the supplement store and I'll get my own, and they've got to be able to do the same thing and break down this oatmeal as fast, kind of like Ron did in the infomercial where he was talking about these other companies. So they're powerful, and I'm so happy that, you know, all of us on this call and people that we share this information with have access to them, because they are, you know, like you said, they don't treat all enzymes or create all enzymes equal. And he shared with me, and I'll share with each and every one of you, a golden nugget, a book. And the book he shared with me, and I'll never forget, it was called Enzymes. Title of the book is Enzymes, the Fountain of Life. And I would go in the other room and grab it for you, but it's called Enzymes, the Fountain of Life. And it's written by multiple doctors, and the whole book is about enzymes. Enzymes is everything, right? Going back to heat and water, you know, you take a tree, and when the leaves fall off the tree, why is that? Because there's no enzymatic activity. It's frozen. It's cold. Enzymes need heat and water. Well, they got the water's frozen, and it's cold. So, of course, the leaves are going to fall off. And then, you know, we get into spring and April showers and bring May flowers, and the water and saturation and heat of the temperature rising, and now these leaves start to grow. So you clean your carpets. Well, what dissolves the stains in your carpets? Enzymes. So there's so many enzymes that they don't even know what they do. But this book that Ron told me about back then, as I was training as a microscopist, that's been literally the Bible for enzymes for me, through Ron's tutelage. It just blew my mind. So yeah, enzymes, they really are the core essence of everything that we do. And that kind of leads me into what I want to talk, or what I want to get a little bit of feedback, because we're getting close to the top of the hour, in terms of, you know, there's 10 of us on this line. I just watched an infomercial with the strongest enzyme in the world, with a guy who's a Nobel Prize nominee, who worked with Nelson Mandela, who's been to every country on the continent talking about enzymes, I think, except for 6 or 8. And we got 10 individuals on this call. Thank you, Van. 6. Sad. We got people dying from coronavirus all around the world. And excuse me, this is just energy in motion, or what I call emotion. I'm just passionate. But it's ridiculous, because we need to get this message out there. And I'm just as guilty. I know people that are having challenges and are sick. I had a buddy in Las Vegas who you know, he lost his mother just recently to the coronavirus, and in her mid-50s. Now, granted, she was a diabetic, and that's not an excuse. It's just, you know, we have a duty. I feel, those of us, to share this, to educate people, and we get to piggyback. Ron's you know, early 60s. I hope he lives to 120 plus. I don't know that that's going to be the case. We have to utilize him while he's available. And so, you know, if you're struggling, those of you that are online, I don't know, and I can't see, you know, we want to get this message out there. We want to help people help themselves and obtain optimal health. So I'll get off my soapbox. Yes, we got to get this message out there. Any other questions or comments? And I got a chat here. Let me read through that.
Over, this is Ron. I got a question.
Yes. Hey, Ron, welcome to the call.
Yes, sir. I thought now would maybe be a good time to ask this question because I've always wanted to ask it, but I didn't really want to ask it to Ron because I didn't know how he would take this. But
Okay. I like it.
It often crosses my mind, if something was to happen to Ron, would this business continue? I mean, is there someone in the family that knows his formulas that would be able to keep this thing going? And that's what I wanted to ask. Thank you.
That's a great question. So the long and short answer is yes, Ron. When you look at and this is very appropriate for this call, when you look at how Ron has transitioned the business of Enriching Gifts, when we talk about, and many of you online have ordered from online, and when we talk about Talia and Stephen, it couldn't get any more closer outside of Ron's wife, Samantha. Talia is Ron's daughter. And I know, without disclosing it on this call, that Ron has other safeguards and things in place that if anything were to happen to him, that enzymes would still be produced and his product line would still be produced, and that there's backups to backups. He's even got a backup to tie in his shoe. And it's not Velcro shoes, but he does have a backup. So to answer your question, yes, if something were to happen to him, there is a backup in place. Even with the language barrier from Samantha, which is his wife, precious Samantha, Filipina, as my fiance is a Filipina. And so, yes, there's a backup, and yes, we will continue to promote his mission. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, sir. That's it. Appreciate it.
Okay. You're welcome. And Steve said, I believe it goes something like this: a three-way independence, HCI, hydrochloric acid, activates release of your enzymes. Enzymes require minerals as a cofactor. Minerals are needed to, absolutely. Absolutely. And this is just humility. Prior to the call, I was talking with some people and I said, I don't want to get on this call and I'm a little rusty. And when I say I don't want to get on the call, I don't want to get on the call and emulate something that I'm not. I'm not Ron Schneider. Will never be Ron Schneider. I didn't spend the years and the time, the blood, the sweat, the equity that he has in this arena. However, he has instilled something in me and shared some of his gifts with me and information that I want to share. So I didn't want to come onto the call and act like I can replace him. There is no replacement. In my opinion, as far as this industry goes, and specifically what we're talking about. However, I know enough to be a little bit dangerous because I have been around Ron and I have been trained, and I know this. I know that if I were to have brain surgery, I would not want the surgeon who just got out of medical school. I'd want the surgeon who's done multiple brain surgeries. So what I mean is I want the person that has the experience, not the person who can just talk a good game and has got educated and read some books and no, show me. So that's what I feel confident in, and that Ron has had the experience. Even though he can talk the good game, we get both. He is very experienced and has been around the world with this, and he shared it with all of us. And that's what gives me my confidence, because I too have followed up with some of my own due diligence. And I've been a product of the product and taken his product and shared it with other people, and have done blood screenings and traveled around and done it, and it's consistent. So that's what I wanted to bring to the call and that's why I chose to share the infomercial and just really take it back to really what the core essence of all of this is. And that's, let's break down our food so it doesn't become toxic to our body. That's the message. And there's no better way to do that than the Enriching Gifts enzyme, in my opinion. And if someone out there on the line, and I challenge all of us, if you can find somebody that has a stronger enzyme on the planet, let us know. So we have about 8 minutes. What I want to request from each and every one of you is, here's my thought and how I want to move forward with this call. For those of you that are listening that are maybe new to the call, it's perfect. But I want to have a call where we're covering what you want, what you and your listeners want. So we are going to be having calls, and I'm actually creating a call schedule as we speak. And what I mean by that is topics. I want to cover Ron's product line. I want to cover disease and illness specific, heart disease, etc. But more importantly, what we want at Enriching Gifts is we want to know what you want. What are some of the topics? What are some of the suggestions, antidotes to make things better so that we can get beyond the 8 to 10 people that we have on this call and get this message out there? And then we'll follow up, more intimately on the call after this with the leadership call. But please, anybody that has any suggestions or comments about what we can bring to this call that is going to be fruitful and is going to be meaningful to grow this call and to educate the masses. Any questions or any suggestions, please? We'll take the next 3 to 4 minutes and let's just see what you have to say.
Maybe you could put a form on the webpage for people to submit their topics for the next call. That way they don't have to email. They can just right there click and just say, you know what, I need to know about XYZ. And that way they're a little bit more inclined to join that call and kind of get involved.
I like that. I see Roderick taking copious notes as I was. Yeah, no, Steve, that's perfect. And Roderick, to that point, the form with the topics on the website, but let's make sure that we capture their information so that we can also send them an email saying, hey, we appreciate your suggestion. Oh, by the way, next Wednesday, May 13th, we're going to be discussing this topic, that type of thing. So we get their information. Yeah,
I have their email required to submit it. And then you might also list what the current topics are, just so that if they don't have their own ideas, they might see something, say, hey, that looks interesting. I think I'll join that one.
Mm-hmm.
It does take a little bit extra work to keep that maintained, but, work is necessary.
Sure. Oh, that's great. Thank you, Steve. Anyone else? Before we wrap up the call, any topics, any suggestions, comments, please? And those of you that do have questions or comments, and we're really looking forward to Ron being here, I can tell you that he'll be here next week. And please join us, and we'll make sure your questions get answered. And if it's pressing, then I would suggest that whoever told you about these calls, just call them back and say, hey, I want to talk to Ron, or I need an answer to my question. And all of us have that availability, and that Ron's empowered all of us to reach out to him. So any other comments? And if you do have any suggestions or comments, please reach out and send an email to info@enriching-gifts.com. And we do have the conference line that we've merged into this line, to this Zoom call. We will be closing that out. I believe it's one more week, Roderick? Or is this the last one more week?
That sounds about right. We had originally planned for 4 weeks.
Yeah. So next week, May 13th, will be the last time that we'll three-way that call in. So if those of you on we'll call it the previous conference line, if you do have a question or a comment, I'll unmute the line. And it sounds like there's nobody on there right now. So with that being said, anyone else, question or comment, antidotes to make things better? Okay. Well, join us next week. We will be back. Ron will be here. We will be releasing the call schedule on these calls as well as online. And then we're going to be really organic with it as well, because there's a lot of people that just have issues that may not apply to the topic at hand. So we want to make some room available for them too. So, all right. Appreciate everyone's time, and we'll see you next week, same place, same time. And we'll be joining most of you, I would say, on the leadership call here shortly. So this call's a wrap. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful night. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Good call. Thank you.